Okay, so Spider-Man, live-action Spider-Man, we can trace the roots all the way back to 1977. We had Nicholas Hammond in the role in the TV series that lasted, I think, until 1981. I am old enough to just about remember this being on TV, so I have like a special place in my heart for the old Spider-Man, the really old one. A lot of people see it for what it is, which was pretty terrible. I just about remember it on TV, but really they played it again in the 90s. They put those three TV movies. There's the first one, Spider-Man, where he sort of gets bit by the spider, he gets his powers, etc. They did a couple of other films. There was one called Spider-Man Strikes Back in 1978, which was took the action to Los Angeles. And then there was Spider-Man, The Dragon's Challenge. I think they were actually put out as part of the TV series, in separate episodes, but then they sort of like pushed them together and put them out as movies as well. But as I say, very much TV movies. You also had in 1978 a Japanese version of Spider-Man. I didn't find out about this till just about 5 or 6 years ago, and it is absolutely crazy. There was some stuff up on YouTube at the time, like full episodes or films of it, and I watched a couple of them back then, and my mind was blown at the Japanese iteration of it. Even though it was around the same time as the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man, the Japanese version is even better because they kind of did the Godzilla thing with it. Like Spider-Man gets in this huge like robot thing. You remember robot jocks and stuff like that? And he's fighting with big monsters. It is absolutely Japanese mayhem, but a good fun iteration of it for the fans. In the 80s and 90s, you had like them trying to develop a script for a Spider-Man live action film. I think James Cameron was involved in that somewhere, but it could never quite get off the ground. Probably half of that was for legal reasons, ownership of the character. Marvel Comics itself was going through a lot of trouble in that time in terms of the rights. But then we finally end up in the early 2000s with the Sam Raimi films.
The human spider.
I don't care. Get out there.
No, he got my name wrong.
Get out there, you moron.
Now, everybody loves the Sam Raimi films, right? Especially the first two. People were a little bit cooler on the third film. You can understand why. It didn't quite hit the mark as well as the other two films did. I enjoyed them. I thought they were great. Tobey Maguire played Spider-Man in those days. You had all the great Spider-Man villains over those three films. Green Goblin, Doc Ock, you had Sandman, you had a version of Venom. Wasn't so good. That was probably one of the problems with the third film. But still, they did it. It came, went. It was pretty cool. And then after that, they were going to do a fourth film, but for some reason or other, it didn't happen. Sam Raimi dropped out. Tobey Maguire was no longer Spider-Man. And Sony, who own the rights to it, I think still do, produced The Amazing Spider-Man in 2012 with Andrew Garfield in the lead role as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. You had Emma Stone as well in there playing Gwen Stacy, and they did two of those films. They did a follow-up in 2014. Wasn't so good. Neither of those films were so good, in our opinion. I remember you saying you thought...
The second one is one of the worst films ever made.
There we go. You heard it here first. If Dave says so, that's what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
And so it didn't go down so well. They never made a third installment. Bit of a shame. I found Andrew Garfield was good in the role. You didn't like him so much in it, I don't think, but I thought he was a good Peter Parker, good Spider-Man. He had that kind of, Spider-Man was always supposed to be this guy who's a young kid, and he was like really cheeky, and he was witty, and he come up with all this stuff when he was fighting people. I thought Garfield was good at all that.
Who are you?
No one seems to grasp the concept of the mask.
Freeze! I just did 80% of your job.
Ever since then, obviously, Marvel's had this huge boom in all of their movies, starting with Iron Man, and then you get through eventually to the Avengers films. And the first time we see the new Spider-Man appear is in Captain America Civil War, which was 2016. It was the third Captain America film. Basically, all the good guys are fighting each other over what's right, wrong, whatever. And Spider-Man suddenly appears, played by Tom Holland, our very own Tom Holland. And that's the first time we've seen him. Obviously, this then spun off into his own film, which was Spider-Man Homecoming. And then we had Spider-Man Far From Home in 2019. And now that brings us all the way up to date with Spider-Man No Way Home in 2021. An honorable mention, of course, we've had in between Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I did a review for that film on our website. I'll put a link to it below because that sort of goes over my sort of thoughts on the character in the film so far. And a lot of the stuff I've just said is kind of in there in one way or another. If you want to see the Japanese Spider-Man, that's in there, the Nicholas Hammond films, etc. Go and have a look at that if you're a big fan of Spider-Man and interested in what I had to say about it all outside of this podcast. But yeah, there we go. We're up to date with Spider-Man.